Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Taylor, and in today's video we're going to talk about everything that's gone wrong with my 6.4 Powerstroke in the past 2 years and over 30,000 miles of driving. So let's go ahead and get started right now. So for those of you that are new to the channel, this is my truck. It's a 2008 Ford F450. It's a four-wheel drive, and it does have the 6.4 Powerstroke diesel engine. I picked this truck up in July. It was July 21st of 2017, and basically driven it just over 33,000 miles in the past 2 years. So today we're going to go over everything that I have experienced that has gone wrong with this truck. Now guys, before I do get into the details about the truck, I do want to address something real quick. And it doesn't hurt my feelings or whatever, but I look through the comments occasionally on some of my other videos, and I do get a lot of people just in there bashing the 6.4 Powerstroke, saying how terrible of a truck it is, get rid of it, all this stuff. And truthfully, I know the reputation of the truck. I did my research before I bought it. I knew what I was going to do to it, you know, well in advance before buying one to try to get some longevity out of it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know exactly what happens to these trucks and how catastrophic they can be, so you really don't need to go in my comment section and just rail on the trucks. I think most of us that have bought them or thinking of buying them are, you know, probably doing some research and kind of figuring out this truck. And, you know, that's kind of why I make these videos. It's kind of an owner's perspective. I'm not a Ford technician. I'm not an expert mechanic. I'm just a regular guy with a bunch of different cars, and I just happen to work on my own stuff, and so this is kind of what I deal with my 6.4. So as I mentioned a few moments ago, I picked the truck up in July of 2017, and I knew that I was going to be doing the deletes on it almost immediately. So in September, I went ahead and did the DPF delete and installed the H&S Minimax tuner, and that was where the first problem occurred with the truck. So as you can see right here, that is the DPF. It just sits in the back of my garage here by my furnace. So I keep all the original parts for the truck that I take off, but that is ultimately the first modification I did to the truck. So I yanked that big DPF off, and I went ahead and put in the delete pipe. It's a big 3 or 4 inch pipe, I can't even remember. It goes from the downpipe to the factory muffler and tailpipe section of the truck, so it's basically a factory exhaust minus the DPF. So I did go ahead and pull that out of there. And the same time I went and flashed a tune on this truck, I mean, it had been sitting for hours. I pulled the DPF off, flashed the new tune on, I cycled the key forward, and the check engine light comes on immediately, and my heart just dropped. I was like, oh my God, what did I do to this truck? So fortunately with the H&S, you can go ahead and check your trouble codes with that screen in there. So I went ahead and ran the code, and it came up as a cylinder number 8 glow plug. There was just an error for it. So I went ahead and cleared it. I figured that was probably a fluke deal, and went and started the truck again. It came on almost immediately. And at this point, I was really stressed out, thinking, man, of course, I modified this truck. The check engine light comes on. I was really getting in my own head. And after doing a bunch of research and just talking to different diesel shops and stuff, they convinced me that, hey, that is a totally separate system on this truck electronically than the whole regen thing and reflash that I did, and it really should have had nothing to do with it. But in my mind, I just thought that the coincidence was nearly impossible, that the moment I flashed a new tune on the truck and took the DPF off, the check engine light came on with a code for the glow plug. So I was really in my own head about this, but I'll go out right now and show you more of what I did. Alright guys, so you can see this pipe here that I'm talking about. It looks like it's actually a 4 inch pipe, and then it meets up to a 3 inch pipe that goes into the muffler way back there. But anyways, this is what I replaced. Like I just told you, this is where the DPF used to be. And this is as far forward on the truck as I was working. Those 2 collector bolts that go to the downpipe. And, you know, the number 8 harness for the glow plugs is way on the driver's side, all the way on the other side of the truck. So there was no way that I could have been under here messing with the wiring harnesses, which even added more to my suspicion of the tuning. I went ahead and flashed the truck back to stock, flashed a tune back on, and I ended up doing that process like 3 times, was still getting this check engine light, and I had finally kind of given up and decided I was going to just replace the glow plug, and had accepted that it was just a extraordinary coincidence. And I go ahead into the driver's fender well there, and I just kind of get to the number 8 glow plug, little, you know, it sticks to the valve cover, glow plug lead, I guess you'd call it. and I pulled the boot off. I just popped it off, and then I went ahead and just clicked it back on. I figured, well, maybe the contact was dirty or something, so I just pushed it back on, get in the truck, and the check engine light went away. And I was just completely astonished. It's 2 years later, it still has not come back on. And that is just one of those things that I really could not believe was a coincidence, but it was. Anyways, I've wasted way too much time of this video talking about a problem that wasn't even a problem. So let's get on to number 2 of issues I've had with the truck. The following month of 2017, I did that last thing happened in September. October, I was driving to pick up a friend from the airport, and my battery light comes on, and I had lost my alternator. So the alternator sits under here. You have to take out the inner fender on the passenger side to get to it, and it literally sits right there. It took me a lot longer than it should have, so if I ever had to do it again, it would be easy. Hopefully you can see it peeking down right there. I went ahead and changed that, and I changed the belt at the same time. That happened right at 92,000 miles. That's not really a 6.4 problem. That's just a car problem at, you know, just almost 100,000 miles. The alternator went bad. Pretty typical stuff. So fast forward a couple months to December of 2017. It was actually Christmas Eve, I believe. I was at my girlfriend's parents' house, who's now my wife, so it was my father-in-law's house. And the truck sat for about 2 days, and I came outside to a gigantic pool of coolant on the ground. And I was so embarrassed to leak a bunch of coolant on my father-in-law's fresh asphalt driveway. So coolant all over, and I just thought, wow, what a joke. So these have a notoriously terrible radiator because they have plastic tanks on them. So the first thing that came to mind was that the radiator had gone just sitting out in the cold. And then I realized that the pool was actually starting further back, which led me to believe it was the water pump. And then after kind of looking into that some more, I realized that the horizontal EGR cooler had ruptured. And if you remember, in October, I did, or I guess it was September, I did the DPF delete, and then I left all of the EGR coolers intact for a few months, and then it ruptured. So basically what happens is when you do that, you are, you know, susceptible to puncture, or not puncturing, but rupturing a cooler, because basically all of the recirculated diesel soot or recirculated exhaust gas that gets sent through those coolers just stays in those coolers and fills them up, because they have no way to get back into the engine, because that EGR valve that was previously installed is just shut 100% of the time when the DPF is deleted. So that did rupture, caused a big leak, and then that is why in February of 2019 or 2018, I guess, I decided to do the full EGR delete, which I did a video on. It's one of the first videos on my channel just about 2 years ago now. So anyways, that was the third problem that I had with the truck. After several months, I think it was April or May of 2018, spring had come along, it was starting to get warmer out, and I was starting to use my AC, which I hadn't used since, you know, the fall before. And I noticed that the AC, when I'd sit at a light, would just howl. Like the compressor would get hot, it would overheat, it would start to squeal the belt, and I thought I was losing the compressor. And then I literally went to not O'Reilly, but Napa. I was about to spend $1,000 on a full rebuild kit for the AC system. And then I thought, well, I better not jump the gun. I better do a little more digging. And if you remember, I changed the alternator belt when the serpentine belt when I did the alternator. And that requires the removal of this harness right here, because you have to disconnect this to fish the belt over the fan. And this truck had the original belt on it, so this connector was essentially welded to the other side. And when I removed it, I kind of had to pry with a screwdriver to get it out. And at the time, I actually damaged it without even knowing that I did. And then I plugged that back in, and my clutch fan was not operating properly. And I had made it through the entire winter, super cold, didn't have any overheating issues of the AC system. And basically that was like a little gremlin of a problem that I was chasing. I almost ended up doing the entire clutch fan, but I noticed that it didn't have any play to it, and I just thought it was really weird that it had just failed without having any noticeable damage or bearing problems. So the fix for this, you know, I can't take this apart right now to show you because I don't want to risk screwing it up again, but basically there are several pins within this connector. In fact, let me get up here to see if I can explain a little better. So actually, yeah, you can see this jumper wire I made. So this one of these pins inside of the connector that stays on the engine side, I guess I'll call this the radiator side and this the engine side, one of the pins actually ripped out of its holder, and basically the wire was not making contact with the fan to give it signal. I found this out months later. I ended up making my own little jumper wire so that I didn't have to go out and buy an all-new harness because it was pretty expensive. So anyways, I made this jumper wire, hooked it back here, and basically just used one of those little splice connectors to connect it. And all has been good since then, but that was a very strange issue that I had never experienced before. You know, I'd get on the highway, AC would blow cold, so I knew it was an airflow issue, and it just happened to be that clutch fan. So that was problem number 4 with the 6.4 Powerstroke. So the 5th and final thing that has gone wrong with this truck since I've owned it is the fuel rail pressure sensor, which I also have a video on of how to fix. It basically requires the removal of your intake, your oil filler, and your passenger side valve cover. You get to that little fuel rail pressure sensor there, replace it, and basically what had happened was this truck had started to develop a rough idle. It seemed to get worse as the truck heated up, and it only did it as the truck was stationary. If I was out on the highway, I would never notice it, but if I was in gear at a stop sign or stoplight, it would just shake. It felt like it had a really bad misfire, and I was kind of scared that something was actually hurt within the engine, like maybe something was low on compression. And maybe after, you know, and I figured as RPMs came up and it built more compression on that cylinder that it went away, because it didn't shake or do anything on the highway. But like I said, at idle, it was just shaking bad. So I did a bunch of digging, and this was actually a really hard problem to figure out because not many people had mentioned it in the forums. There was no YouTube videos about it. So I just kind of went ahead and replaced it, thinking that was hopefully the issue because I think it was a $45 or $50 part. And sure enough, that fixed it. So that was like a 3.5-hour project, and that took care of the whole rough idle. And since then, this truck has essentially been perfect for me. I just put a new set of tires on it, and really all I do is change the fuel filters and the oil, and I just drive it. I mean, the thing has just worked for me flawlessly, other than those few issues that I just mentioned. And I personally really like the truck. And not only has the truck mechanically worked very well for me, but I also think the truck looks really cool. I don't know, let me know in the comments. I really like the F450 front flares, the 10 lug Alcoas, lights, cab lights, everything. It's kind of like a mini big rig. I just really think these look cool, and they definitely still have a relevant look today. Alright guys, well that is going to do it for everything that has gone wrong for me personally in my 2 years and 30+ thousand miles of ownership with my 6.4. I know some of you probably were not expecting the news that you got here today because, I mean, the truck has really worked pretty well, and there's just some minor issues that I had to address, none of which were extremely costly or a super big deal, and I'm sure people are out there going to oppose whatever I'm saying and still say the 6.4 is terrible, but personally it has worked very well for me, and I do plan to keep the truck and keep driving it because it just serves me well every day. So if you're in the market for a truck, I would say a 6.4 in general, I would say maybe try to buy one with under 100,000 miles if you can. That's what I did when I bought mine, and I had very good luck so far in the past 2.5 years. And yeah, you know, I don't beat on my stuff. I take care of it. I maintain it. I'm not hot rodding it, so it's just working really well for me. And that's just my experience so far. So anyways, if you found this video helpful or informative, please give it a big thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more automotive content like this. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next video.